Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. I am your host, Jay Edgar, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Libertarian presidential candidate Souraya Faas. Souraya, welcome to Ed's World.
Thank you for having me on the show.
This is a treat because I don't get many presidential candidates on, and I've had Keenan Wallace Dunham on before, but that was way at the beginning of the race, so I mean there wasn't a lot going on. But we are getting down to the line here, so I'm hoping that you're going to be able to give us a little bit of insight into everything that's going on, and just some ideas on what the Libertarian Party would be doing during a pandemic that the Democrats and Republicans currently aren't doing. So I'm fairly excited for this interview, and I'm hoping that everybody else who watches will be as well. So, before we get started here, I always like to start with a little bit of an anecdote. And one of the things that I've seen today is I keep talking about the fact that we're seeing a pandemic out here, people being quarantined at home, and what they're starting to do, I think, is do some of the little projects that they always said, I'm going to do this, but I'm never going to have time to. I wanted to bake some bread yesterday. Not a grain of yeast to be found anywhere in the stores. The week after, there was no flour anywhere, and of course, we went forever without toilet paper, but that's all up. So America's coming together and we're getting back to all of our roots, and I really do like that idea. But we do have a full show to get to on top of that, so my little anecdote is going to be cut short on this one. We're going to talk a lot about COVID here. I've got some diagrams of the caseload that we're going to be looking at over on the screen. We'll talk a bit about the stock market circus, some of the quarantine orders that have gone in. And Souraya actually brought to my attention that we should talk a bit about what we're going to be doing on foreign policy with the sanctions. So I'm going to let her lead that discussion as we get there, and much, much more that has to do with COVID. The presidential race is up, and we'll talk a bit about Warren starting a political action committee, Bernie and Biden fans going into each other, and we'll talk a bit about the state of the Libertarian Party race, so we can see what's going on there and hear about the candidates that the mainstream media doesn't want us to hear about. An oil war is brewing over in the Middle East, so we'll talk a bit about that and the fact that it might not be over anymore, even though we thought that the meeting was going to be today. Finally, an earthquake hit Idaho and almost nobody paid attention to it, so we'll talk a bit about that. It's going to be all of this and more over on Ed's World. Thanks for checking us out over on the Freedom Scoop Media Group. And we are live right now on YouTube, Twitch, DLive, Periscope, and Facebook. So check us out there. Get in the live chat. We will read that between topics. So get your questions in for the Libertarian Party candidate here. Otherwise, if you're just catching us now or you can't catch us live, you can catch us on demand on YouTube and over on BitChute.com, or you can catch us on the audio platforms iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you're on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review, though. That really helps us move up the charts. After a lengthy introduction, it's time to find out about the best part of the show. So, Souraya, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I bring in a lot of diversity, something different that this country hasn't seen in terms of a presidential candidate. My family is originally from Aleppo, Syria. My mom was raised in Venezuela. I'm Armenian Catholic, so I speak all the languages as well. I was born in New York and raised in Brooklyn, and I moved to Miami right at the start of high school. So I was always involved as a community activist from the time I was younger, doing anti-bullying campaigns. I got a lot of citizenship awards, very outspoken. And I think I had always wanted to be the first woman president from the time that I was younger. Learning about Susan B. Anthony and the women's right to vote. And I said, always curious from the time I was younger, how come there was never a first woman president? And I would have to say when I was 14, I was told I'd be a good politician's wife, but I couldn't be a politician because I was a woman. And that actually came from a son of a prominent Democrat. And I was like, oh, I'm going to prove to you otherwise. And that's kind of like where it started. But to be honest, the reason why I'm doing this, I was a candidate also in 2016. I did it as an independent, and I was a former Republican at the time. I did it because I just felt the two parties are no longer serving the people. Everybody is working for their own self-interest. Who is a politician? A politician is supposed to be of service to the people. You're supposed to be there to help bring everybody together, to help, to be a problem solver, it's not about the interests. And that's what we see nowadays. We have, unfortunately, a president who is doing more division and discrimination in this country than ever before. And we've seen that the two-party system is not working. That's the reason why I did it as an independent. And of course, as an independent, you have no ballot access, and it's very hard the way how the system is made for you to be able to run for any office, let alone the presidency of the United States. So I'm currently the youngest candidate. When I ran in 2016, I was 33, and I was able to prove to everybody that you don't have to be rich, you don't have to have a famous last name. All you have to do is really want to make a difference. And I think that's what's important more than anything else. I have a political background. I studied political science. I majored in it. I also did international relations. Knowing I wanted to go into politics, I wanted to know what I was talking about. So I covered all my bases by studying the EU as it was being formed. I'm certified European studies, Asian studies with a concentration in the Middle East. I did regional transgressional studies with a concentration in Latin American comparative politics, and also sociology, and just being involved with the people. Nobody really takes the time to listen to them, to see what it is that they, the needs of the people. And I was able, very fortunate to travel the country and to see the needs and where it is that we have to do change. So I bring in a fresh new perspective, and a lot of common sense is what this country is lacking, unfortunately, nowadays. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that here too. You kind of took my next question away from me, which is fine, because you've read the itinerary, you knew it was coming, so that's good. And we need more people to run as freshman term politicians as well. I mean, I was planning on, in 2018, I was planning to run for the Senate against Tammy Baldwin, and something changed in my life, and I wasn't able to do that anymore. But yeah, I mean, we have a freshman politician as the president right now. For all of his faults, he makes it okay for everybody else to run, I think. And that's been one of the reasons that in spite of a love-hate relationship with the guy, the reason that I've continued to support him at this point was because now...
Well, I think...
Go ahead.
I think even Obama was at that point. Because remember, who was he? He was a community activist when he first started out.
Well, he was a senator, though, when he ran.
Yeah, but I'm trying to say is nobody really knew of him until he started running for office. It's not like he had done something where his name was out there.
Right.
So he will always go down as being the smartest in the sense of how he was able to get out his name known to everybody using the social media. And I would say he was the first Facebook president at that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we're going to check in with the live chat here just to see who's hanging out before we get into topics here, which I'm fairly excited for. Looks like Britt, Tweets by Britt from over on Twitter, is in here saying everyone on Twitter is baking bread right now, which I kind of thought that as well. And she also has a compliment for you. She says, so she already knows more than Gary Johnson. We don't like that guy around here.
Oh, boy. Well... Let me tell you, the whole thing when I was doing interviews in 2016, everybody would tell me, so where you definitely know where is Aleppo, and I would say yes. They're like, Are you going to do shirts that I am Aleppo?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know where Aleppo is.
No.
I'll be honest, I'll own it. I don't.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city.
Ron Helton's in here with the sticker party. So if you guys aren't on DLive, go over on DLive so you can see the stickers over there. That's always entertaining. But I think it's time for us to get into some topics over here. So the first thing I want to get into, of course, is going to be the big news that everybody's talking about, we can't get away from, and that is the fact that the COVID is ripping through our country in quite a way. And I've got the graphic over here. Let's get that up on the screen. And I'm actually going to pull out a studio mode so I can read it because I'm kind of blind. So we've got some statistics up here. Worldwide, as of today, we're at 1,309,439 cases, with 351,890 cases here in the U.S., which I think that top number is going to be a little bit higher because I don't trust China in their reporting. I don't know how you feel about China and how they're reporting it. I don't trust China in their reporting. They
I don't
have,
think it has anything to do with China as much as it has to do with the fact that we don't have enough people that are being tested, and that's the
that,
reason why the numbers are going to be on the rise,
yeah,
as it is readily available, becomes available.
absolutely. Ron brings that up all the time in the chat too. That testing is going to be the big thing, and we are getting to a point where we're starting to test more in this country. But I know China doesn't want to test is the other thing because they want to make it seem like they have a handle on it. From what I've seen, of course, I can't. I'm not in Xi Jinping's mind. I can't speak for him, but just from what I've seen out of Chinese politics, I could see where he wouldn't want that to be out there, especially with people buying from China. But what do you think about that?
I mean, I think we have to focus on our country. Each individual country needs to focus on themselves right now, resolving this issue. I don't think we should be worried about China's numbers as much as we should be worried about our numbers. Unfortunately, if we didn't have the government so involved in a lot of these issues and having, the FDA approving certain things or disapproving things and make things readily available, it would be cost efficient and we'd get more people tested and we would have more data as to what's going on and to find a solution. This is ridiculous. The fact that, they have such a control on everything and, playing out into people's fears in order to take away our freedoms and liberties is exactly what they're doing right now. They're taking this situation to their advantage, and we see more of it every single day between both parties. It's kind of like a competition, unfortunately.
Yeah, that I could see absolutely a competition in that matter. One of the things I wanted to bring up, and I always find interesting, I want to always ask my guests when I get the chance, is what do you think about the fact that so many cases are in New York City and the tri-state area there, and so few of them are in places like Florida, which is for the most part very densely populated, and especially over in Los Angeles, which is not as densely populated as New York, but there are still a lot of people that live there.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I think more than anything, I said it from the very beginning, it's the fact that they all live in apartment buildings. So you have to remember, a lot of people carry the virus and don't necessarily present symptoms. We've seen it with our own mayor here in the city of Miami, who's a good friend of mine, Francis Suarez. He didn't present much symptoms and he was able, from home. He didn't end up going to the hospital or anything like that. So people can go on with their days normally. Not everybody, again, is being tested to know whether or not they have it. By the time they get to being tested, they would have already infected how many people, which they would have come into contact with. That's the problem that we're having. Again, it's the lack of testing, having enough resources. And so when you live in an apartment building, you're going up in the elevator, which is enclosed, and you're touching the buttons, and all that goes into effect. Now, there's one point that I brought out from the very beginning, and we've seen it being proven now with that tiger in the Bronx that got the virus, is the fact that all the animals that have fur, their fur, because the way how Fauci was explaining it was that it's kind of like an aerosol, right? So the droplets kind of go out to a distance, but they fall on the ground. So when people are walking, they could be moving the virus. They're tracking. That's why they ask you to leave your shoes outside before you go into the house. The same thing with the pets. A lot of those people that are in the apartment buildings or that are in quarantine, they're not really leaving. The only time they're leaving is to go outside or to walk their dog on the pavement or whatnot, or to get groceries. So they come back into the house. Most of the times, of course, everybody is either hugging or carrying their pets, and they're always very close to them. So they can transfer the virus. Doesn't mean the dog has it. You understand what I mean? But
yeah, absolutely.
That's something nobody was thinking about. Or the children, the younger children, the age, if you really look at it, the ones that had it are the age of the ones that would be crawling or sitting on the floor playing. It's the same thing. Those, I think, are very important points that people need to consider in terms of prevention and taking their own precautions and, making sure they wipe the paws of their dogs and, wash them and clean them just as they would their own hair. Or an article came out in Spanish that the guys with beards are also more prone to catching the virus because of that. So you have to be careful.
Do you think there's any truth to the idea at all that vitamin D or warm temperatures would negatively affect the virus to the point that it doesn't spread as much in places like Florida and Los Angeles?
I mean, that's what they're saying. Again, I'm not a scientist. I cannot give an opinion when it comes to that. I can only go by what we're being told. But I can tell you for a fact that there's a lot of things that we can do to prevent,
Mm.
like you're saying, to take the vitamins. My doctors are recommending zinc, B12, vitamin C, vitamin D. My doctor actually told me from the very beginning, tonic water is very good because it has the queen, which is an ingredient in that antiviral antibiotic that they're taking.
Okay.
So I'm actually drinking tonic water 3 times a day. It's not necessarily a dosage or anything, but it's just something extra that you can do to help prevent, or gargling in, they call it in Spanish bicarbonato, like in warm water. So it's like the sodium, and that helps too. A lot of things you can do, home remedies. And also when you get your fruits and vegetables and you bring them to the house, I spray it with vinegar and disinfect it before, you wash it, and then we put it away. So there's a lot of things you can do.
Well, I got some apples sitting in a bag over there that I was going to make some apple cinnamon rolls out of there. I might have to go and spray those down because I got some vinegar. So yeah, that may be a big thing. And once again, I think it was Nephilim Ninja a couple weeks ago was in the chat, and we were talking about the fact that there was a low caseload over in California, and he lives over in California. He said, well, we've had the rain and then the sunshine afterwards, so the rain washes it all down and then sanitize. I don't know how the science goes along with that, but I mean, they're keeping their caseload low.
Yeah, I don't know.
So what have you been seeing, speaking of caseloads and everything else, especially with the New York Stock Exchange being in New York, what have you been seeing about this stock market circus that we've seen over the last couple of weeks? Now, last week to me... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, last week to me, I looked at this and I saw to myself, this seems to have stabled off some, because remember, a couple weeks ago, it was limit up and limit down every day. Every day before trading, all the futures were always at limit up or limit down, and then a few times they had to hit the circuit breaker in one direction or the other during trading as well. And now it seems to be, they're not limiting. They're just gradually going up or going down, except for today when they hit 1,600 points up. But I don't know what to take out of this, because it seems like a day where it would have been a good day was a really bad day, and a day where it seemed like it should have been a really bad day was a really good day. So what have you seen on this?
I've seen that every time Trump tweets, the market goes either up or down or full circle. That's the only thing I know is that, if he does a little bit less talking, we'd be in a lot better position. It's really interesting to see how that happens.
I've got a love and hate relationship with Shapiro, but I do think that he got it right when he said if they just gave him a dummy phone with Twitter on it and sent him in the basement, the administration would be running like a well-oiled machine. Just so he think that he's tweeting and actually, get a bots in there so they react to it. So he thinks he's tweeting, and then just let him go and let the cabinet run it.
No, the problem, I think, more than anything, is that he's right. There is such a thing as a fake news. The problem is when he started believing it himself, and he even started creating his own fake news. And that's really serious, because he saw, I've always said that the media is the fourth branch of government because it moves public opinion. And we see it. We see it every day. People don't take the time to do their own research to verify the information that they're being told. Mm-hmm. So they're glued by the screen or listening to the radios on a drive back, and that's all they take. And that's and that's how the information spreads. And of course, again, playing into people's fears more than anything. If you're going to sit there and you're going to listen to what they're saying, remember, everybody has their own agenda for what it is that they're saying. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, even the news people, the journalists, they don't do investigative journalism anymore. We have a lot of companies, a lot of interests behind what's being told and what isn't broadcasted. So they're even frustrated, believe it or not. It's not that they're enjoying it. It's not about the ratings. At the end of the day, they're families and they're real people. And, unfortunately, they're just doing a job, just like everybody else.
Well, and the thing with the media, too, I mean, there are the people out there that have the agenda, but I don't think it's the people on the screen. For the most part.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not at all. It's the corporations and who are the ones that run it and the interests behind it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can give you a whole chart, of who's who and who's married to who. And, and all those different companies. And that's the reason why. That's the reason why the Libertarian Party is not as well out there in the national news, because it's not to their benefit, because we always speak the truth as it is. And I think that's the interest that Trump triggered in everybody, is that he would say the things that people were thinking and the things that they were afraid to say, or he didn't want to be politically correct. But you know what, he's not the only one that's like that. In fact, a lot of the libertarians are like that, because at the end of the day, what makes us a libertarian, it's questioning why or why not something is happening. And we don't need a government to answer it for us. If we leave everybody has enough common sense, at least you'd hope so. The people, they're going to do their own in terms of, preventative stuff, in terms of survival, in terms of, we don't need all this government control. I mean, I've always said we've been socialists under the table. It's been 30 years of the same mandate, different faces. It doesn't matter who gets elected, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. I mean, we've seen it's always the same. Nothing changes, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they are a lot the same too. I've been noticing that over the years, because I'm out of a union household myself. I grew up under unions, so for me growing up, it was always, you better vote Democrat or they'll send your dad's job overseas. And then, growing up, and I lived just outside of Boston for a couple years. So I came from union household in Wisconsin to super progressive leftward Massachusetts. And that's where I started to see that it wasn't going to work. But of course, where did I fall as soon as I got out of that? Right into the neocon thing, where it was a lot of the same stuff, just different people saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of politically homeless right now. I don't see everything that the LP does as advantageous. I don't like the Conservative Party at all, the GOP. The Democrats are just gone, and they'll be gone until they can get rid of the progressives.
It's very unfortunate. I tell everybody there's about 52% of Americans that identify themselves as independent or non-party affiliate. And it's just because everybody's had enough of both parties not working for the people. All they do is give empty promises and just to get elected. And by the time they're getting elected, all they're answering to are the special interests and all those PACs and the groups that got them, it's people that they owe favors to is the only people that they're working for. And we see it. We see it even with the Congress people that we have. I mean, take a look at what just happened with the whole stimulus. That was ridiculous. If you take a look at it, had the money really went to the people, what is it? It's our money. It's our own money that they're paying us back for. At the end of the day, all those taxes that they taken from, let me repeat it. They're stolen from us. It's really wrong. From the beginning, we wouldn't have all this issue that we're having with the economy if they hadn't done that. So.
And one of the worst things about that, too, is the way that they actually had it set up, it was going to be your money back, the way they initially had it set up. But then they had to redistribute it so people on the lower rung would get the equal amount as the people that were up, and, you didn't start seeing payments go down until you got to $75,000.
But it's such a misconception. So, look, let me give you an example, right? Mm-hmm. What about those kids that are in college right now? They don't get anything, right? The American citizens, because if their claims is dependent on their parents and they're older and they're not necessarily working, but they do have all these student loans, they're not in school right now, right? Everybody's home. They're being forced to pay their rent. So you have kids that are paying $700 to $800 that they're at their apartments, and they still have to pay the late fees. Now, they can't be evicted with the whole thing with the eviction right now, but they're charging them anywhere from $10 to $50 per day on a late fee if they're late on their rent payment. And the parents are scared because they co-signed. They don't want it to affect their credit. That's a big issue that we're having right now, at least here in Florida with the universities. So there's a lot to consider. This is something, bigger. The way how I see it is we would have just froze everything for 2 to 3 months and just continue. We wouldn't have to worry about all this.
And we will be talking about the rent strike a little bit later, too, because that is fascinating to me, and I would like to get the libertarian ideas on what government intervention is for there, because I don't like what they're doing right now. But on this, though, I do want to move off of the stock market and go on to this quarantine issue, because your state of Florida just issued the stay-at-home order this past week for the first time. They became one of the last states to do so. But what do you think about these stay-at-home orders? I know we're under suggestion right now It's a stay-at-home order, but there's no enforcement mechanism under it. But what's your take on
But see,
this?
but see, that's the whole thing. You tell everybody to stay home, but then, um, you can go out if you have to do what's essential.
Hmm.
What is it to the government? Who is the government to decide what is essential or what isn't essential? You know, the beauty shops consider themselves essential, and because everybody's in need of a haircut right now or something, to keep look at the situation, they need to shave their beards and whatnot. You see what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
it's an issue because you can't dictate to what is essential and what isn't essential. At the end of the day, these are people that have to pay their bills, because how else are they going to do it? The stimulus checks are not going to come to the people, wholeheartedly and in one way or another. Or do you understand what I mean? It's very hard. And what about the people that are green card holders that
Hmm.
own businesses and they're not necessarily citizens, and they have people that are employed under them that are? What's going to happen to those people? They're going to lose their businesses and probably lose the ability to maintain that. It's hard. It's really hard. Something to consider. I tweeted in the very beginning. I said, whatever they're going to give those citizens, they have to also give to the green card holders, because they also are entitled, because they're business owners and taxpayers as well.
Does a green card holder have a social security number? Because I know that was Cortez's big complaint about it was only going to social security numbers and not to anybody who has an I-10.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So,
They do.
what does the stay-at-home order in Florida look like?
Well, I mean, the city of Miami, I tell you, is the best right now at this. And it's funny because, again, Francis Suarez and Mayor Jimenez, which is, Francis is the city of Miami, and then we have Carlos Jimenez is the county mayor. So they're always at odds with each other. What was happening was that the city of Miami issued after 10 o'clock, they cannot be out. And it's usually, the downtown area. Obviously, it eliminates all those, alleviates, people trying to go out. In terms of the youth, they're the ones that want to hang out and things like that. And then he wants to stop the domestic flights that are coming in from all the hotspot areas. And you have the county mayor saying no. So again, the city of Miami mayor knows better because he had it himself. He knows, he has had the virus. He's trying to prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to see how you have one that's only caring about the economy and not necessarily about the people. So we have quite a situation going on right now. And I'm hoping and praying that they reconsider and at least, unite. So at least we can have one thing happening at once. You can't really tell the people what to do. What you can do is suggest it and tell them, the reasons why you shouldn't, and leave it up to them to decide. I think the people are more, they have the common sense. And if you take a look and see the people that have been going out, what have they been doing? They've been helping others. They've been going out doing shopping for their elderly, whether it's their grandparents, and trying to help out the homeless and opening food banks. And they closed down the churches. The churches are very essential. They're the ones that have the St. Vincent de Paul program that feed the families weekly.
Mm-hmm.
At least in our church, we feed over 120 families. We give them packages of food and the donations. And, you can't say that the churches are not essential. That's really wrong.
Yeah, that's been a big argument this week too, is the fact that certain municipalities are saying that they want to crack down on churches, and ministers getting arrested for the fact that they're holding
Yes, I
service
saw
right
that.
now. That is crazy to me, and that is anti-First Amendment because of the religious clause in the First Amendment.
But what surprises me is the fact that nobody is saying anything or doing anything about it. They've instilled this fear in everybody that they would literally, if they tell them, I think somebody even put a meme on it, if there was a camp and they tell you this is going to be the camp that's going to, save you from everything, everybody would be running there.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not like that at all. What is your freedom? Is it worth only $1,200? That's really wrong. So that's something for everybody to consider and really think about, because this is something that could be long term and we don't know what it's going to be. You can't have the government dictating to us what we can and we cannot do, and we see the government themselves don't even know what they're doing.
Well, and I know that California locked themselves down hard a few weeks ago, and like you said, nobody's standing up and doing anything. I offered. Uh, the woman that's going to be sitting in your seat next week, Harvey McLeod, lives in California. I'm not going to say where, obviously. She'll say where, but I'm not going to say where. I'm not going to dox her on that. But I said right off, I said, you know, if you need me to, I'm going to go out and buy myself a Lincoln Mark 8, and we'll go down and bust you and your husband out of there. I'll do a chase with the
Right.
California Highway Patrol. And then I just said the same, Britt that's in the live chat right now. I just got off probably an hour and a half, 2 hour conversation with her because I found out that she lives around the corner from my cousin over on the other end of California. And I introduced the two of them because you need conservative allies in California, especially if you're conservative over there. You need allies over there. I just introduced the two of them. My cousin's wife has a lung condition, so she's not going out and doing anything. My cousin isn't either because he lives in the same house with her. So they've got people from the church coming in, like you had said. They're bringing them their groceries and just leaving them outside for them.
I passed by 5 houses today and dropped off stuff for people. So I think it's human nature to want to help one another, and we've seen that. And if this has done anything to the Americans, is show them that we are united despite all the differences. And as you've all seen, this virus doesn't know no race. Mm-hmm. It doesn't know no social class. It doesn't know any sexual preference. It's none of that, And you have to be careful. It's all up to the individual. At the end of the day, it's you and how you can prevent from catching it yourself. You don't need somebody to tell you how to do it or what not to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this could lead to certain people with loose morals and a hatred for the government picking up large cars with large trunks and using them for things that I'm not going to say on this show that I may or may not be considering doing? Hint, hint.
What do you...
Like they used to do with alcohol that didn't have the taxes paid on it in the 70s and 80s and in the 20s.
The more that you restrict people from doing things, the more they're going to find a way to do it. And that's where the situation happens. You can't tell people not to do it. I understand that we have to do, take measures and whatnot, but you can suggest things for people, highly suggest and recommend things, and then hopefully they'll take it into consideration. Because at the end of the day, it's not just their lives, it's everybody else's, their families. So they're going to want to stay home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. I would give anything to spend some time with the old lady right now, but I know she's got a weakened immune system, and we can't right now. That's just the way that life is. I would give anything to just be able to see her right now, but weakened immune system, and I work, I have one of those essential jobs, so I have to be there all the time, so it's a sacrifice I have to make. Make sure I keep her around for a while anyway.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to touch on with this, though, was the deadlines, because some of these orders do have a hard end to them. The federal hard end is supposed to be 4/30, but they're going to reassess that at the time. But some of them are indefinite, and that idea scares me because this is a government taking over at that point and saying, you will stay inside as long as we tell you to, and you won't come out until we tell you to. So what is your take on that?
Well, let's backtrack a little bit. The ones that are telling you there's a deadline and they keep on bringing it and moving it, it's because they don't know the answer to that question realistically. So the ones that tell you indefinitely, it's because they know for a fact that this is going to be longer than what these people are suggesting. It's not that they're, mean that term, the control in that sense at all. Mm-hmm. But we have to look at the situation and to see the interests that lie behind it. Okay, the people that are in charge. First of all, Dr. Fauci has a lot of interests with Bill Gates, and that obviously doesn't help when it comes to the antibiotic usage and recommendations that they did in the very beginning, because as you all know, Bill Gates is pushing for his own agenda and his own initiative with the whole vaccinations being mandatory and the whole, chip and tracking as to who has gotten it and who hasn't with the ID 2020. So those are things that everybody needs to keep in mind when they're listening to these people that are talking. What are the interests behind them? And I just think Trump has the wrong people once again surrounded himself with the wrong people. I don't think he necessarily has bad intentions. I mean, I ended up endorsing him in 2016, but I just don't know. I honestly feel he sold himself to Saudi Arabia. And if you take a look at it and see, the coronavirus has existed from way before they're telling you. This is not something new. You can just take a look at behind the Lysol bottle from when it first began. They had put it as one of the viruses that it disinfects. So I saw a magazine that was actually in Arabic that published the first coronavirus that had taken the COVID was in Saudi Arabia. And they were talking about the prevention and all that stuff. This isn't something new, and the World Health Organization knew about it, and this is all public record. The thing is that people don't take the time to read and do their research again. So that's, it's really sad to see how they make it seem like it's something new. It's not something new.
Absolutely. I got one more thing here before I'm going to let you lead the topic after this here, but we're going to circle back to the stimulus because you talked about this. This is a little bit of a special interest to me because it's actually my representative that suggested this here. So Wisconsin 1 Representative Brian Stile issued a bill on Tuesday of last week to revoke the emergency funding from the Kennedy Center because they took the funding, the $25 million of funding, and then fired everybody off of that. I don't know if this bill is going to get any traction on this, but because you've talked about what was in the stimulus and how it helped people and redistributed, tell me what you think about this idea.
Well, he's right. And it's not just that alone. It's not just the Kennedy Center. It's like 3/4 of the bill itself. It has to be added to that bill because, again, it's not going to the people directly. And I think that's the issue that everybody is having. I was on an interview. It was a panel in Crosstalks with RT, with Peter Lavelle. And we were discussing that, how the money is not going to the people. So if the corporations would tell you that the money is going to be in turn given to the employees and it's going to be used for that, then it's understanding that they want to give these, information to the companies, but give them the money. But we don't have that information, so we don't know where it's going to go. And as you said, they took the money and they fired everybody because they don't want to pay their insurance either. I think that's a big issue that we're having right now. I mean, I'm an educator. I've been an educator for over 20 years. And running for office, I haven't been doing it full time. Obviously, as a part-time, I don't have health insurance. I had to do it on my own. And it started off with the Obamacare. When they came up with the Obamacare, how are these people going to go around it? In the beginning, you had part-time workers that were working part-time in the morning, and then they would do adult school, adult ed, so they would have enough hours to feed their families. Well, they decided that the 2 part-times constituted a full-time. So they no longer allow them to do that because then they would have to pay for insurance. So I was one of the people that said, well, why? Why don't you just have them sign a waiver? You don't want your insurance instead of having over 4,000, nearly 5,000 people not working to be able to feed their families. So if we have rules like that, done away with and all these regulations that we have, and we wouldn't have the issues that we're having today. People are not going to need all these bailouts. People are not going to need the people would have insurance and security because they'll have from their own money that, they won't be paying income taxes. So to spend on their families, especially during situations like this.
Well, one of the things with this bailout that I can respect to a point, I'm not for it in any way. I've actually already, because I changed banks since I did my taxes last, so they're not going to be able to direct deposit it for me. They're going to have to mail me a check. I'm actually going to cut my check up into the shape of a middle finger and send it back to the government. But the respect that I can have for them taking care of some of these businesses so that people have a job to go back to is based on the fact that this isn't a crisis that came from any sort of mismanagement. There's some mismanagement there, but it wasn't so much out of mismanagement. It was that these same people that are putting this money out there just told all these people not to go to work.
Yeah, they told them not to go to work, and at the same time, all these loans that they're going to give and all these, bailouts and all these things that they're going to do, not everybody is going to be approved. They don't realize that. I heard the process takes almost 2 weeks for for them, and you have to have a certain number of employees and you have to show your tax returns. And so all these businesses, they're staying at home right now thinking that they're going to get some sort of money or funding. That's not true, because not everybody might get approved. So that's a scary part, because then what are these people going to do?
And it just blows too that some of these restaurants are not going to come back. But given the fact that everybody is sheltering in place right now and they're doing things like cooking from scratch and trying out new recipes and building a new menu, I do think that there are going to be some new restaurants that come up out of this. Some people that had a little bit of money squirreled away throughout all this are going to take the entrepreneurial spirit. I don't think some of these waitresses and waiters that are out of work right now are going to be out of work for long, even if some of the restaurants go under permanently, because there's going to be somebody waiting in the wings to pick it back up, to pick the building up, revamp it, and make a new business out of it. But we still have to face that point of, okay, so for right now, they can't feed their families, but they might have a job in the future.
But again, it's the private sector is what would have helped them. And those are the essential places that they closed. The nonprofits, the churches, the synagogues, the places of worship. Those are the ones that help the people in the communities, because they know their communities the most in need and what it is that they need. So that's what's sad. It has nothing to do with it. They can use their own common sense, and they don't need to, congregate together in masses, but at least have them open so they can provide those services for their people.
Now, you added to this schedule this time through something that I had not thought to bring onto, and I think this comes from a libertarian state of mind. So I'm going to let you lead this part here. You had told me that we should talk about the foreign sanctions. So go ahead and lead that section and tell me what you think about that.
Oh, of course. They have everybody so entertained with the virus and the quarantine and all that, and they don't realize that they've added sanctions to places like Iran that is hardly hit, Syria and all that. And if you take a look and see, we're in a state where the United States should be an example to others. What example are we showing everybody else by doing that? That we have no heart, that we're, what are these people going to think about us? Or what is it they're thinking about us right now? This is so wrong. This is a time where we should do away with the sanctions, allow these people to get the proper medical supplies that they need, the proper, equipment, so that they can help their people survive. I mean, by having sanctions from the beginning is in essence a declaration of war against that country. Who are we to dictate whether they should or they shouldn't do something or not do it? These are sovereign countries. They have right, and they have people under them that they have to take care of. So this whole thing with the sanctions is really ridiculous. I mean, we've seen Russia, even Cuba sent doctors to Italy. Russia sent us medical supplies. What does that say about Russia? Obviously, they're a better person when it comes to this situation. This is a time, I think, in the world where everybody needs to put everything aside and everybody should come together, unite, and just help one another. And this is ridiculous that we have a president, an administration, and a government on both sides, that isn't really, they're just taking advantage of the situation for their own benefit. This is ridiculous. The fact that the president of the United States on a tweet said that he spoke to his friend, the Prince of Saudi Arabia. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't want to be friends with any of those people right now. Did you guys remember that they're the ones that brought down the Twin Towers during 9/11? Because they tried to twist that too and pinpoint on Iran. Well, that's not true. They're trying to justify the killing of the commander of Iran, saying that's ridiculous. They think people, I'm a New Yorker, I'm sorry, I remember everything in detail, what it was that happened. I mean, Saudi Arabia, the government threatened to remove about $750 billion worth of assets if the Obama administration at the time would allow the families of the victims to sue them. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that's all public record. You can't erase that. So they're lying to the people. It's the same thing when this whole thing started. What did President Trump do? He was misleading the public by saying that it was a hoax. You don't do that because people are looking up to you. You're supposed to lead by example. Just, I think it was yesterday, he said about the masks that, if I felt it was needed, don't you think I would have worn one or something to that point? I mean, who says that? When you're telling people now that it's important for them to have it. When they couldn't have enough masks, they're telling people you don't need them, you don't have to use them. just because they didn't have enough. It's not about that, because those are people's lives that are at risk, or do they have no value? That's what makes me question, to these people.
Oh, we have no value to the government. I've known that for quite a while.
Yeah, but that's wrong. That's not how it should be.
No, it shouldn't.
Okay.
You're right.
And that's the reason why I'm running for office, because I'm running on a message of unity and peace. And we've seen it that this country, this government doesn't dictate, what it is that these people want. The American people are so separate from the way the government is right now. And I always say it in all my interviews, especially the international ones, when I do say them in the different languages, in their home languages. I say, don't blame the Americans. The Americans have nothing to do with the government and what it is that they're acting, because in essence, they're working for their own interests. And that's what's wrong. And that's the reason why the people don't have faith in politicians anymore, or in the government itself, or authority. Do you think the police officers that are putting their lives at risk, they have families too? They're just as scared as you are, when they have to come up to you, to your car or whatnot. You don't blame the officer. They're just following their orders, the laws that are made. We have to question those laws, because anytime a law is created, it's obviously created for some people, meant to be broken, and for others to hurt. So that's the problem that we have right now, is we have a lot of laws. We have a lot of federal agencies in place that we don't need. I mean, we wouldn't have the debt that we have today if we weren't funding wars that aren't even ours. If you notice, why should we care what's going on everywhere else? What happened to putting America first? Isn't that what this guy ran a campaign about in 2016? That's what bothers me the most. He said he was going to put America first. And then he went to pay a visit to Saudi Arabia and he sold himself to the king. That's all we do now, is whatever Saudi Arabia does, whatever they say. Right?
That is right. And we're going to talk a bit more about Saudi Arabia, too, when we talk about the oil war. But, yeah, I mean, I understand why the sanctions are in place in Iran. I don't like the idea, but I understand why. I know that it's, we don't like the people that are in charge of Iran and how they're treating the people of Iran. And, what do they say? Everyone's 9 missed meals away from a revolution.
Are the people, let me tell you something,
okay?
And I'm going to tell you. When has Iran did an aggression against anybody else? Did they do an aggression to us? No. Honestly, they haven't done anything. But Saudi Arabia terrorized our country. They're the terrorists. So who's to say that they're our friends and we're putting sanctions on these people? Because of the oil? Is that what it is? I mean, are people's lives... I mean, no, it's not. It's not very well. It's exactly about the oil, unfortunately. This whole issue with Syria, they tried to make it look like it was a civil war. There was never a civil war in Syria. It was all about the oil. And we saw it. Trump said it himself. The reason they're still in Syria, because they're stealing the oil. He said it himself, because we're stealing the oil. Right there is a confession. But do you know what? The international law was made in such a way where the United States can police the whole world and nobody can ever do anything against us. They can never call us out when we're wrong. And that's the problem that we have, because we shouldn't have that much power. Nobody should have that much power.
And somewhere along the way, we became an ally of Saudi Arabia, and I missed that somehow. I probably wasn't that into politics at the time, but like you said, I knew that they were integral with the 9/11 attack. Then, yeah, somewhere down the way, all of a sudden, they're our biggest ally in the Middle East.
But we shouldn't have allies or enemies. Again, the United States should be the big brother and sister to everybody else. We should be the ones to set an example for everybody else. By choosing to say that these are our friends and these are our enemies, we're the ones that are creating this friction and this division that's happening right now. If every single person worries about their own country, we wouldn't have half the problems we're having in this world. Because everybody should be worried about their own people, the domestic issues, and what interests do we have other than the oil in Saudi Arabia? There's no democracy, right? There's no women's rights, there's no human rights, none of that. So what makes them an ally of ours? What makes him a friend?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is when that happened. Because I legitimately don't know. All of a sudden, we're our ally.
But that's what it is. It's all about the oil at the end of the day. The OPEC, that's like a gangster organization. Every once in a while, they'll up or they're lower and they'll tell people what to do. It's like, why? It's all about control at the end of the day. It's about the people's egos. That's the only thing that they care about. When you hear them talk, that you can tell right off the bat.
You notice something that did disappear out of the news almost instantly as soon as this COVID thing started coming up into the news is we stopped hearing about the pullout from Afghanistan mysteriously. And we were
Yeah.
right on the edge of that, too. And I don't even know if we're still pulling out of there at this point. That was supposed to
We've
happen this month, wasn't it?
Let me tell you something. We've put ourselves into these endless, never-ending situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? We created the terrorist. Hillary Clinton said it. She said it. She said, we created them, we funded them. They're telling you, right, that this is what happened. What makes you think if he was going to meet with the terrorist organization, with the Taliban? Like, why are we giving them any consideration whatsoever when you're supposed to be eliminating these people if they're the ones that are causing all these issues? He ran a whole campaign in 2016. He wanted to combat terrorism, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he worked with Russia hand in hand in Syria, they wouldn't have had the 10 years of war that they're having right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But it's not about that. Because if it was, why is it every time Syria, the President Assad, combats the terrorist, you have Turkey, who's another ally of ours, supposedly, right? Working on behalf of the U.S. because, of course, they're the ones that are shooting targets. They're the ones that are doing things, so it won't look like we're the ones that are doing it. They're rearming. They want to do, whether it's, truce, or they want to stop the airstrikes, and they want to do. Why are they saving these terrorists, especially with what's going on in Idlib and all that, because they got them all cornered. The people are finally able to take a breath of fresh air, and we help the terrorists all over again. So whose side are we really on? That's something to consider too, because we created a monster and then now we're going to go play hero. How does that make any sense?
That's interesting to see, and I would like to see where it comes to an end, because I would have loved to see us get out of Afghanistan. 'Cause that's an unwinnable situation. And all of the rest of the Middle East, too. They've been fighting each other since Abraham was walking around.
But we're putting the lives of our soldiers at risk, our children, okay? These are our tax-paying dollars are funding these wars that aren't even ours. These are taxes we shouldn't even be paying from the start. We wouldn't have the debt that we're in today if everybody were to mind their own business and we were to focus on our own country and our own interests that we have here. Do you know how much homelessness we have in America? Why are we concerned about anybody else? How come we're not taking care of our people? So that's why I'm running for president.
Well, thanks for that. Let's move this back over to our side of the pond here for a second now, and let's talk about what we teased a bit earlier, and that is the fact that progressive politicians and many others in some of the harder hit areas are calling right now for a rent strike. Lack of employment has caused landlords to ease rent requirements and give a delay, and you had mentioned the late fees that go along with that. And a federal executive order restricts foreclosure and eviction for 90 days at this point. Now, in most cases, all of these restrictions do require tenants to pay back pay, and that does not sit well with some people now who seem to want to get something for free. So, what have you seen on rent strike so far?
But it's not about getting things for free, okay? Because there are insurance, the landlords can claim the insurance later on, or they can claim that as a loss. But the tenants that are not working, they can't. You understand what I mean? That's why I kept on telling you it would be a lot easier if we would have kind of like frozen time for 2 to 3 months, where you wouldn't have to pay anything and then just have it continue, just pick up right when the time happens. That way the people won't have to worry about paying the rent. They wouldn't have to be worried about paying the bills. They wouldn't have to, and that's when you're supposed to help the companies at that time, not give money to the Kennedy Foundation, to the Kennedy Museum or anywhere else.
Well, one of the problems that I do have to wonder about that, though, if we get to the point where we are forgiving rent for a few months, though, is, I don't know of a bank in the world that's going to forgive the mortgage that's behind there. I know the people that own this building I'm sitting in right now, and they're they're not loaded or anything like that. This building is not paid for. They still have to pay the mortgage every month. So, I mean, it keeps going up the chain, and there's the investor in the bank now that is going to lose money if the bank loses the money on the mortgage. I don't understand. I guess to me the problem that I have is how do you freeze everything without freezing all the way up the top? I don't know
Oh
if that
yeah,
makes
the
any sense.
mortgages as well. No,
Yeah.
no, I understand what you're saying, but it's later on they can claim it as a tax break, or for the owners of the stores and the locations. You know what I mean? If they keep their employees, they should be allowed a certain tax break at the end of the year, or if they continue paying them at that point. So it will be some sort of balance. We need to find that balance. I think that's what it is. And the problem that we have is the fact that they did away with this group that was supposed to take care of all of this in case of a crisis. So we were not prepared for a crisis like this. I think we were caught very off guard. And it's like you hear all the other countries say, the United States is the most powerful, and they consider themselves a superpower. Where's all that power now, where you see that they're shorthanded and they're using garbage bags for their medical staff? And, it's because we were putting all of our money and we were putting all of our energy and all of our interests in the wrong places. We weren't focusing on the people that really need it. A lot of these nurses, they weren't getting the credit that they should have gotten. Or the same thing with the teachers. We're working from home right now, with the family there too, and having to cook and do all that. That's like, it caught but you know what? They made it happen. And that's what we do. So, and they were always underappreciated and underpaid. So I think when we finish with this, we're going to learn to appreciate everybody, especially all these considered non-essentials in the beginning. We realize they're more essential than we thought. The truck drivers, they're the ones that are supplying all these stores and bringing them, the stuff that we need. They've been nonstop, God bless them. It's hard. Or the grocery shopper, the guy bagging, nobody takes the time to appreciate that, or at least they didn't in the beginning. But now we see that they're important. Everybody's important in their own way.
Do you think, because you brought up putting money in the wrong place, what do you think that this whole thing does to globalism on the whole? Like we saw earlier on, the supply chains being interrupted because China said, screw you, we want our stuff. And I know there were some conspiracy theories that floated around that China engineered this so they could cut off our supply chains. I don't know if I buy into any of that, but all the same.
No, I don't feel China is to blame for this. I can say that China, it could have been planted in China from, I think there's some sort of investigation happening with the whole, in Boston with the Harvard, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I guess I'm not familiar with that one.
Yes, it was in the news recently. But then again, not really the news. It was in the paper, whether it was the New York Times or... again, you guys have to do your own research about what's going on and where this has originated. And then you should draw your own conclusions as to what's happening. Okay? Because if you notice, China... They're allowing every single company there is manufacturing masks right now. They have enough. How come we're not doing it here in the United States? Why isn't it a
We have
concern?
companies that are stepping up to do that, though.
Yeah, but they're not allowing them because of the FDA regulations or because of this or the other. And, the private sector. Like, if we had the testing readily available, like there's a take-home one that they're doing now that they're trying to get approval for. They're making it so difficult. That'll make the test at like $30. And I saw it. It looks like you're taking like a diabetic sugar test to see, your sugar and how that works. I mean, if people start doing it at home on their own, don't you think they'll take their own precautions? Because at least they're more aware and conscious whether or not they have it. And it shows you if you've had it. So we have Josh, who's running for LP chair right now, and he was taking it. I didn't get a chance to see what his results was because he was sick about 3 to 4 weeks ago. So he could have had it and he just got better from it, and he wants to know whether or not he has it, if he did have it. So that's going to give him that result. So how come that's not readily available to everybody? It's kind of like buying it in the store, kind of like a pregnancy test or whatnot. So do you think, we would have a better insight as to what's going on? We wouldn't have to wait for these results, and we wouldn't have to, go to special testing or special facility. You can do it at, your own home.
Well, that's one of the things too that I know that we've talked about numerous times on my show is the fact that, I mean, if we could see who has the antibodies, who's had it and has already cleared up from it, you're going to start to see a lot of people that can start to go back to work without having to have the fear that everybody else is having right now. Right now, a lot of people out there are just afraid to go there because they think they might get it and die. But a lot of people have already had it and an asymptomatic variant of it. They can go back into the workforce without worry at this point. And to have a test like that available, especially if it is $30, you can pick up off the shelf, take it, and then show your boss, hey, this happened, without having to go to a lab or anything. You're going to start to see the economy jump back up and we wouldn't have to worry about a big freeze like that.
Take a look at the anti-malaria antibiotic that a lot of people are using around the world, and it's helped a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Why is it such a big deal, to say whether you wait and find out? And, why are we waiting? We have somebody that's dying. Why not to see? I'm a type of person where you would do anything you can to try to help somebody, at least to make sure your conscience is cleared. I'm not going to sit there and wait for the government to give me approval or to find out if, this is okay or it's not okay. If it's proven to work in other places, obviously it's not going to not work in the United States either. So that's ridiculous. And that has, again, a lot of interests behind it, because you think the pharmaceutical companies or the vaccines or Bill Gates are going to be happy, that people, they're not going to advertise that this is a solution. Mm-hmm. If he's put in billions of dollars into a company to do his controlling ID, mandatory ID for everybody, vaccine. So we're in crazy times.
Well, I'm going to skip ahead on our schedule here because you were bringing up the next point here. The media has now been forced to walk back their allegations on the chloroquine treatment because it is coming out and doctors are using it with both the right to try bill available and the fact that it got emergency approval from the FDA. And they're finding out that it actually worked, even though the entire mainstream media tried to tell us for a while that it wouldn't work at all. And all it was going to do was kill people because they were going to take fish tank cleaner. So that's been kind of entertaining to watch.
Yeah, again, it's all about the interests behind it. If you do a track as to why it's being promoted or who the ones that are behind it. And again, I think it's really sad to see that Trump has surrounded himself with the wrong people. Mm-hmm. If you take a look and see, they're all connected. Everybody has their own interests tied to Bill Gates and what it is that he's doing right now. And he's the first one. So, and he's the one who's spearheading this whole thing. So we really need to consider, what is our ultimate goal? Are we trying to get rid of this, mm-hmm. or are we trying to expand it and do a wait game and to see what's going to happen? I think if a lot more people complain about it, you're going to see, different results, and you're going to see the results a lot faster.
Absolutely. So, going off on that, because we talked quite a bit about the chloroquine here, I just want to touch on a couple other news stories that happen around the COVID, and then we can go pay attention to our horribly neglected live chat over here, because they're chatting away and we're not talking back to them. One of the things that came up in the news that I thought was really crazy, now the U.S. naval ship Mercy is docked just outside of Los Angeles right now to be a relief for the hospitals. The Mercy is actually taking care of the non-COVID patients, so that the hospitals can focus on the COVID patients. And an engineer derailed a train just outside of Los Angeles in an attempt to crash it into the U.S. naval ship Mercy. Did you see this story?
No, to be honest, no.
I looked at that and I'm like, what he was cited as saying in the article was the fact that he was doing that to try to bring attention to the USNS Mercy because he thought that it was a spy ship, essentially, that it was going to be spying on the people in the greater Los Angeles area. Now, there was nobody on the train, and only the engineer was hurt. Of course, the train didn't get far enough to get to the USNS Mercy, but, I mean, this is some of the craziness that isolation is doing to people.
Yeah, it is. It's really sad that, the people are already thinking that, well, I mean, it's not sad. It's because they do have so much control on us and a lot of surveillance, bless you, and that everything is a fear. They see something new and they don't know whether it's a whole trust thing. People distrust the government. They distrust everything that's going on because they see what's happening. It's not somebody telling you something now. You're actually living it. So for yourself what's right and what's wrong and what's working and what isn't. So that's where the problem happens, is when the government thinks that they can still mislead you, that they can still manipulate you, and you're well aware of it now because everybody knows that there is such a thing as fake news. They know what to believe and they know what to see. And you can just see the body language of the doctors and everybody up there when Trump is giving a speech at his press conferences, and it makes you want to question, and you should be questioning. You should be questioning everything you hear and everything that you see. And do your own research. That's the biggest recommendation I have for everybody. Everything is public record and nobody takes the time to look at it. Go back to the UN. Go back to the time frame of what was happening. Find out what things are being discussed. And you'll have a lot of answers. And I tell you right now, if Julian Assange was free and he was out, we would have had this result a long time ago, because I'm sure he would have known a lot of things that we don't know right now. And they're more than happy that he's there. And if not, they wouldn't have kept him there this long and trying to hurt him. Because Trump praised him from the very beginning, right? WikiLeaks was wonderful. But I tell you right now, if it wasn't because WikiLeaks most likely has something on Trump too, he would have pardoned him a long time ago.
Oh, I'm sure he's got something on a lot of us at this point. Assange, he's a pretty thorough guy.
He did the world a favor.
He did.
He opened our eyes to a lot of things. And you do not hurt the messenger.
No.
We should be questioning what came out of it and not the other way around. And that's really wrong. Because just like him, that goes back to the whole thing with our freedoms. Because then we're no longer a democracy, right? If we have to worry about what you say and what you can say, or something might happen, look at Roger Stone. And he has a gag order. And why? What are the interests that are behind him? It's not just Trump. You have to remember, he wrote about the Clintons' war on women. He wrote about the Bush war crime family. This is everybody getting even with Roger Stone.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just one person.
Yeah, I can definitely see that one.
And that's wrong, because he's just like him. There's so many others. But if it was anybody else who would have done half the things of what Hillary Clinton did, or anybody else, they would be in jail or killed. So.
All right, last thing that I have on this topic here before we move out of this, of course, is the fact that Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff have come together to create a task force to investigate the COVID response. But, of course, obviously, the House is going to investigate everything that they can. But the problem that I had with this, and I think a lot of people had with us looking into this, is the fact that this task force does have subpoena power. So they're going to impeach him again.
No comment. I just think it's such a waste, because, to be honest with you, there's a lot of things they can get him on if they had wanted to. And the reason why they're not discussing those things, or they're not bringing it up, is because it would also implicate the Democrats. So they're not focusing on the right issues. They could have done this a long time ago and saved us a lot of tax-paying dollars that we shouldn't even be paying, that they're stealing from us in order to do all this. This is just, I tell you, I feel like this is such a waste of time. It's like, why do we have these people even there? They're supposed to be representing us. Well, where are they now? It's kind of like Representative Massey, what he said. Where are they? They should have come to work, and they should vote on things, and they should question things, and they should debate things, because that's their job. They were elected to do that, to represent the people.
Yes, they're not representing the people, absolutely not. And the other side of that, of course, is, well, I like the fact that they're investigating each other constantly, because they're not making laws while they're doing it, but they're spending all kinds of money that they're stealing from us, like you said, to do it.
Yep.
Millions of dollars wasted on something that they're not going to find anything out of, or
But
they're
haven't you
going to
noticed
ignore,
that
rather.
when things like this happen,
Hmm.
coincidentally, or they bomb something in another area, it's because they're trying to shift our focus and our attention to divert it into something else because something all of a sudden happens. So
Yeah.
I wonder now what's going to come up that they're trying to keep us entertained with this new investigation.
Well, that's the thing too. That it's the same thing. Shift the focus. Let the media control the narrative. I am surprised I've not been pulled down on YouTube yet for saying this, but I've said numerous times on Contemporary and on this show that if this had been Hillary Clinton's presidency and this would have happened last week, a police officer would have shot an unarmed black man, and that would be all you'd be hearing about on the news right now. As soon as it started getting out of her control, something else would have happened to take this out of the news.
But you have to remember, Donald Trump was a Democrat. He was friends with the Clintons.
Yes.
And, so if you take a look at everything that he was doing, even the policies, the foreign policy from the very beginning, okay, everything was exactly what she wanted. That's what I tell you. This has been ongoing. We've had the same mandate for over 30 years, different faces. Nothing has changed because they're all the same interests behind it. Okay, they have the same common interests, and none of it has to do with the people. And I think it's a time. The United States right now, the American people has realized, and they see it. Neither the Republicans or Democrats are working for them. And there is a third party. The Libertarian Party is here for you, and we're here to represent all the people at the end of the day and to ensure that our liberties and our freedoms are protected. At no point, are we going to risk those or sell those or, because somebody has to defend. And that's the reason why I keep on telling you again, I'm running for office so people can see, that there still is hope. And there's somebody out there that wants to work for you. It's not just saying it, because I am one of you. I'm also a normal person who's gone through half of the things, 3/4 of the things that you guys have gone through and more, because I was a teacher and I was a student. And do you understand what I mean? I own a business and I've worked as a cashier and I've been there and I know the suffering that everybody's going through. I taught citizenship preparation and ESOL. So I can't be a hypocrite when I talk about immigration reform. And you have to take into consideration those who are doing it the right way and those that aren't doing it and those that are trying to manipulate the system. And again, that goes back to the laws that we have in place that shouldn't have been from the beginning. And I think this we've seen with the whole, essential, not essential, with all the different departments shutting down and the things that it's an eye-opener to see all these people that were getting paid or all these different divisions that we had that were serving no purpose whatsoever other than the spots of people that they owed favors to or the relative of so-and-so that held a position. All that is extra money that we're wasting.
We're going to leave that there on the COVID topic here. We're going to get back to the live chat here, which has been horribly neglected. And they're going after it. I just kind of scrolled through here. They're going at it good. So welcome on in, everybody who's watching. Going back to the beginning, Ron Helton says China has quarantined more people than the U.S. has. There were no quarantines for people returning from infected areas. Then he also says kids are super spreaders. Parents need to keep them at home to help put this under control. Most have no symptoms but can still infect. Yeah, the younger the people are, the more asymptomatic they seem to be. And it's not like they're not getting it. They're just asymptomatic.
But they're carriers, like she says. They're spreading it to others without knowing.
Britt says, we haven't worn shoes in the home for years because so many germs are tracked in.
That's true.
Ron Helton says, I read that those who are infected can spread it just by breathing. This virus is already widespread. If true, we are in for a long ride. I went to the store today. I'll probably choke on all the antiseptic spray. It was so thick. Nephilim Ninja says, we might have just got lucky on the rain. Raining right now. Homeless population works against us. Ron Helton and Spartan Subhuman both said stock market is a casino and then a casino with better odds and more expensive to buy in. Brittany says she has so much common sense. I'm loving this. So that's to you.
Thank you. And I know that you all have common sense too. The problem is that you've been scared to not believe your instincts and your own intuition, and you're just following what everybody else is saying because you're scared just like everybody else is. You know, we all have families, we all have jobs and bills to pay and whatnot. But there's a right and there's a wrong. And when something is right, and when it's wrong, we have to speak up and we have to say something. We can't stay quiet about it because it's our life at risk. And we've seen that for these politicians, our life has no value, unfortunately.
Nephilim Ninja says, toilet paper has been my libertarian talking point recently. Let the price be raised so people don't hoard. It's a good idea. Ron Helton says, the stimulus is a huge ripoff or transfer of wealth to the corporations and banks, theft. Brittany says, the government shouldn't decide what's essential. Nephilim Ninja says, yeah, I know how they're going to keep stores open but close churches. Ron says, immediate access to testing is the only way to get a handle on the spread of this virus. Until that happens, we are just blind. Big Cat Kayla says, live in the pod, eat the bugs, wear the chips. Let's see what else. Kayla, I can't read half of this. Come on. You're free to speak, don't get me wrong, but come on, Kayla. I can't read half of this on the air. We're still trying to stay on Google product for as long as they'll let me on anyway. But thanks for supporting the show. Ron says, government breaks our legs and offers us one crutch. Kayla says, corporations sell you one crutch while charging you for the price of two. Trump is scum, Kushner is scum, I agree. Also came from Kayla. Ron says, there are no good cops. They take an oath to uphold the Constitution and then enforce whatever anti-liberty law the legislatures pass. You said that they were just taking orders for that too, so we do have to go after the lawmakers on that. Yes. Kayla says 3 meals away from revolution. I'm guessing is what you were saying by 3 meals. Let Iran fight Israel. Well, they've been trying for 3,000 years, so at some point, yeah, they're going to have to do it.
I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it a long time ago.
They had done it a long time ago. Kayla, I can't read half of this. Come on. Ron Helton says we need to disband at least 95% of the federal government and a lot of the local state governments as well. Ron says FDR was the one who made the alliance with the Saudis for their oil. Yeah, there are others on YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch and everything. Is the Periscope feeding into everything else? I can't tell. Britt says banks are offering forbearance, but they want that money back in lump sum in 3 to 6 months. Yeah, that's what I was saying too with the rent. Is they want the lump sum back at the end of all of this.
And that's not right because people are going to start working and they're not going to obviously make that much at that point to pay it off. So
most homers can't afford upwards of $20,000 in one sum. Oh, Kayla, you are spicy tonight. You are spicy tonight. This tax break won't make up for the money lost on rents. This is unprecedented. It also comes from Britt. How hard is the test to do at home? That's a question from the live chat.
Super easy. It takes about 10 minutes from what I saw. And all it is just like doing a regular blood glucose test. They just have to, put the blood on a certain point, and it tells them the 3 different. I think it was solution what she was putting like at another area, and just regular saline solution aside from it, and it shows them, the result in 10 minutes, whether they've had it, whether they have it, or they don't.
Kayla says people must die in their backyard for them to wake up. I disavow. On principle, of course. Ron says there should be no surprise that all these presidents are surrounded by those with their own money interests. What was it? Around $2 billion spent on the last presidential election? Yeah, that's a lot of money.
People don't realize it's not about the money. When you're running for office, at the end of the day, you should have that many people who support you and back you. That's more important. I tell everybody I'd rather have millions of people giving me $1 than having a few people giving me millions, because that shows that I have the support of the millions, and that's what's important. It's not about the money. At the end of the day, when it's about the people, you shouldn't have to put that much money into it.
Kayla says all lobbying must be abolished. She also
Completely agree.
says, imagine if they looked into Kushner's ties. Yeah. I go back and forth on Kushner, I'm not going to lie. He has good points, but yeah, he is bought and paid for, absolutely.
He's not an expert of anything to be in the position that he's in right now. And the fact that Trump listens to him, that's kind of scary as an advisor, to see that he surrounded himself with people with no experience in any of this, and he's having them, advise him. That obviously means they're getting their information from their own interests.
Ron Helton says, new boss, same as the old boss. The agenda remains the same regardless of who is in office.
Not if I'm in office.
We got a sticker party going on here. Taking orders is never an excuse for enforcing the laws that infringe on individual liberty. No victim, no crime is the only proper standard.
I completely agree. Did you hear about certain courts closing as well? So what happens to all those people that are awaiting trial? Or the people that are getting arrested now because they're, breaking curfews or whatever it is they're doing? They're going to be sitting in jail for a very long time. How constitutional is that?
And because it's Kayla, of course, I've got a question. It came from Ron, but I know it's because the question's coming out of here. So we gotta see what your take is on APEC. So the question in the chat is: will you turn down any invitation to speak before APEC, and will you refuse any support from them?
Would I support? I'm sorry, because you're cutting off. I couldn't hear it.
Oh, sorry. Will you turn down any invitation to speak before APEC, and will you refuse any support from them?
To be honest with you, I don't want. I even turned down. What do you call it? There's another organization too for the same reason. Anybody who isn't working for the interests of the people, I will not want to get any funding from them, nor would I want to even stand in front of them. What am I going to try to convince them if I don't agree with them?
And we're going to leave it on that. We'll circle back for more live chat here, probably 20 minutes or so, because as more people drop out of the field, this becomes a shorter and shorter topic. But now we're going to go with 2020 Watch. So, for the most part, we're going to be talking about the Democrat side, but I do want to get some take on the Libertarian side as well. So, let's go through a few news stories here. First off, the DNC is officially delayed and possibly canceled. So, Kyle Jurek is not going to get his chance to burn down Milwaukee. What do you take on that?
Let me tell you, I think right now everything should be pushed back and wait and see what's going to happen. Even a lot of I think the issues that we're having when it comes to election is when third parties, especially us, have to meet ballot access qualifications for a lot of these. It's not fair from the very beginning that we should even have to do it, or that they would treat us any differently than they would anybody else. But the fact that they're taking advantage of this to keep us out completely is what's really wrong. So, they should really take it into consideration, and we need everybody to voice and to speak to their representatives. And it's not just on this, it's on all the issues, again, whether it's the sanctions that are hurting, the genocides that are happening in Yemen, a lot of issues. It's not just local, it's also international. They're using this virus to keep us entertained, again, to veer away. Because if we're going to start doing mail-in ballot voting and all that stuff, half of that stuff isn't going to end up there. It's going to be, what can I say? A lot. We're going to be here all night if we're going to talk about what's going on and the corruption and all that. You guys know it. I don't need to repeat it.
Yeah. When is the LNC?
The LNC was scheduled for the weekend of the May, the 22nd, and I feel that we're still going to make it happen, hopefully. Everything will be resolved by then. I guess just kind of like a waiting game like anybody else. But I think people are narrowing their choices as to who their preference is by now. And because everybody's more or less remained active, those who are still in it for the right reasons. And, doing interviews like I am on Skype or any other source to stay connected with the people. And if you guys do want to follow the campaign, and of course, to know more about me, you can do so on all social media with my first and last name on all the outlets. It's Souraya Faas, Souraya, last name Faas, Faas. And that way we can be more connected. And I'd love to hear from everybody as well. Because at the end of the day, I'm here to work for you. So.
What is your take on political action committees? Because it seems that there's been another one that's sprouted up here in the news. So I want to get your take on it before I read the headline that I have up here.
I mean, the PACs is just another way for them to be able to fund and to all that with a special interest and to put money out. We shouldn't be putting so much money into elections as it is, okay? Because then what happens is you owe those people favors. Again, it has to do with the lobbyist. It's a big conflict of interest when you see somebody that holds a public office that is also involved with a lobbying firm or whatnot. And that's something that we should have as we should really look into that too and do away with it.
Yeah, I know that just pretty much 2 steps out of office when Paul Ryan retired, he went right to the lobbying firm, and he used to hold the seat that represents where I live right now. He's actually been my representative for most of my adult life.
Oh, wow.
And he still owns his house in Janesville. He just lives in Maryland now, so he can go and lobby. I would love to see that house go on the market too, because somebody could actually do some really real good with that. It's a huge house. It's actually zoned so you could make a nonprofit out of it, or actually have something commercial come out of that too. But he's using it as a residence. So Elizabeth Warren has officially started a political action committee called the Warren Democrats. And of course, it is there to bridge the gap between progressives and the neoliberal side of things and make sure that we get more candidates into public office like Elizabeth Warren herself. Did you get to see anything on this at all? It's right on our website.
I did. I took a look at it, but I didn't really look into it.
There wasn't a lot of information out there except for what was on the website. I happened to glimpse a headline to it, and that's why I got a look at it. And it's money laundering is pretty much all that I can see out of this here, and it kind of fits with the Warren Democrats title because, I mean, what did Warren run on when she ran for president? Oh, I'm going to be grassroots, but in turn she turned around and used all the money left over from the Senate race that she didn't need to raise money for, and used that to bankroll most of her presidential run. I don't believe that she got all of her money from $1 and $2 and $3 donations from people who had $2, $4, and $6 in the bank. What do you see on that?
That's crazy. She's taking advantage basically of the people and telling them that it's going to be for a certain issue and then using it for her own.
Well, like I say, most of the money that she had came from 14 when she ran for the Senate, so 16. It was 16, I'm sorry, when she ran for the Senate in Massachusetts. Because you didn't need a lot of advertising for that. Like I said, I lived where she was representing up there, and they were going to vote for a glass of water with a D on it up there. The Republican challenger that she had up there didn't stand a chance, so she didn't need all that money to run for the Senate, but man, it was right there for presidential politicking. What do you think something like that would do for the current state of Washington now, to have another PAC like that in there, especially with the values that Mrs. Warren espouses?
I think, again, it all has to do about interests. So.
Okay. Bernie and Biden fans are continuing to dig at each other on social media. And, I mean, if you even breathe the fact that there was nothing that Biden could have done at the beginning of this outbreak, you're going to be labeled a Biden fan, which I am not. But I've been called that numerous times at this point on Twitter because
let me tell you something. I do give Biden a lot of credit for bringing up the whole thing about the sanctions, because it's important. I mean, I've been outspoken about it, but again, I haven't gotten the national media attention we should be getting as libertarians, because we are the third largest party. But I do give him credit for that, because that's something that nobody else was talking about. And it's very important because it's a human issue. It's not just, I'm going against whatever Trump is doing. No, that's something you really have to, do for mankind. You can't just restrict them like that, especially not during a time like this.
Yeah, I mean, sanctions, that is a big deal. And for the most part, to have a neoliberal come out against them is, I would say, a bit disingenuous. But, I mean, disingenuity is something that we actually need in this cycle, I would think. So, yeah, I can get 100% behind what you were saying there. But their camps are just digging at each other horribly. And of course, Bernie fans think that the narrow margin that Bernie has to the race to the top of the ticket is going to be the guarantee that he's going to be the nominee. I don't even know why he's staying in at this point.
I honestly thought there was some rumors going around that Bernie was going to drop out. I think, wasn't it like 2 weeks ago or so, that were floating around?
Yes, but of course he changed his mind and it became he's just reassessing his campaign at this point.
I think what worries me is that everybody who is a Bernie fan should have learned from 2016 to see, the fact that he seceded to Hillary Clinton after badging her for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole interests. I mean, we saw. Nobody thought Yang was going to support Biden. Nobody thought, Gabbard was going to do the same. Okay, at the end of the day, all these people and what they were representing and what they were talking about, that right there, just doing that shows, what interests they really had in mind. It wasn't those people that they had their support.
Yeah, that was crazy how everybody just jumped up and got on the back of Joe Biden all at once, all in a second. And I know I don't want to get tinfoily on this whole idea. Go ahead.
Even Harris, what's her name, Kamala Harris? Nobody would have ever imagined that she would have, after what she said, and she pointed out the whole racism and all that.
Oh yeah, busing Harris.
The fact that she did it, that's I think everybody's trying to fill that vice presidential seat and hoping that they would get it.
Well, I don't want to get completely tinfoily on this, but one of the things that I saw as this was all developing was, of course, when we went through the impeachment, was the fact that they tried to impeach Trump for using the presidential power to go after a political rival when Biden was the furthest thing from a political rival at the time. He was slipping more and more in the polls, and he wasn't anywhere near the top of the ticket when they were going through this. But mysteriously, all of a sudden, everybody dropped out and got behind Biden, and suddenly he's a political rival again. I don't want to get the tinfoil too tight on my head, but you can't ignore a coincidence like that.
I don't think anybody should be following the polls and what it is they represent. I mean, at the end of the day, we see that that's just who are the people behind it and who are the ones that are conducting these polls. What interests do they have? So I don't trust the polls, and to me, that means nothing. I want to see action. I don't want to hear people just making promises. So.
And I mean, we've seen what polls can do, and it was kind of interesting the other week when Trump's approval rating on the coronavirus pandemic got above 51%, and everybody who said that 53% of Americans wanting Trump removed from office meant, or 53% of the people polled meant that all of America wanted Trump removed from office, suddenly realized what a sample size was. That was kind of funny to watch. Because now that it's 51% of Americans, oh my God, it's only 1,000 people were polled.
Yeah, they're not to be trusted.
No, they're small sample sizes. And I mean, I've seen some of these poll firms too, where they'll just take a poll and throw a poll out and take another one until they get the result that they want. It's scary to see.
That they want.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And the problem is just that, is that the people believe it, and that's what they go by. And and then they'll support one over another because they see the numbers of one is higher than the other, and that's not true at all. That's all manipulation is what they're doing.
I mean, I only take aggregates like Real Clear Politics, but even that's manipulable at that point. But at least they're getting different samples of different polls that want different results.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who's going to... Well, I know who's going to become the nominee, but I don't know where this is going to stand. I know Bernie's staying in to try and... Or they say that he's staying in to try and force Biden to the left at this point, which I think he's just a Mondale at this point anyway, but that's my take on it. But I don't know what you see on that.
I think we'd have to ask him.
Well, You, as a presidential candidate, are taking the time to get into the alternative media, talk to people in the alt media, do interviews like that. And a lot of the mainstreams were not paying any attention to the alternative media, instead going to the mainstreams because they got the message out that they want. But Joe Biden took an unprecedented step this past week, and he decided that he wanted to present us with here's the deal with Joe Biden over on all your podcast platforms. It is as bad as you think it would be. I listened to it.
Oh, you did?
It is as bad as you would think. It's very heavily edited because, I mean, the guy can't string together a sentence, but the audio engineer can't figure out how to make it sound like it's not edited. So
It's such a shame that the Democrats can't find a good enough candidate that they're holding on to him. And it's just like Hillary. Same thing all over again.
well, yeah, bought and paid for a neoliberal candidate who's been in politics since the 70s. Absolutely, same thing as Hillary.
Do you know what bothers me the most out of something like that is like if you had the opportunity to make a difference, you should have done it when you were in power many years ago. You're not going to wait until you become president. And it's the same thing. I'm not going to wait till I become president to get this stuff done. And that's the reason why I'm with the people and I'm helping and I'm listening. And that's the difference between me and everybody else. And it has nothing to do with me being young. Of course it does. I mean, me being energetic, but I'm talking about in terms of experience. You know, at the end of the day, it's not about the years. It's about what you've lived yourself, and you don't have to experience it personally to know about it. You see it from the people themselves, just hearing their stories, and that's how you develop the solutions. Again, it's common sense, and that's what we're lacking.
It is, but once again, I don't think that they're really being serious about this presidential race, to be completely honest. I think that they looked at the way that America reacted to Trump when the economy was good. And I think that they're looking at this saying, there's no way that we can win this presidential election right now. Let's just throw up a sacrificial lamb and then focus on 2024 and making sure that we keep the Senate so that he doesn't get another Supreme Court pick.
But do you want to know something? That's just the problem. Everybody seems to think, you know, they don't have faith in themselves to think that they can beat him. Well, why? What's so good about it that you think you can? There's a lot that can be done. Again, putting America first, and he hasn't done that. That should speak volumes just on its own. The fact that we're going through this pandemic, you know, we don't even have the supplies. We don't have any of that. I mean, do we really have to steal a shipment from Germany? I mean, how low is that? What does that show? You know, that anybody can come and do the same here? You know, what example are we setting to the world? This is ridiculous. I mean, people have to understand, even the libertarians, we have a chance just like everybody else. The fact that we have ballot access, the fact that nobody is happy with the two political parties that we have in place right now, you have to realize we're in a time where we need change. We really do. We need a change in the right direction. And I think the Americans are ready for it. And especially having a woman president, you know, it's totally different because we're more, you know, we take a more humane approach to things. You know, we're not going to be about wars, and we're not going to be about, we're going to be here about, I'm going to be here about solutions, you know, and trying to see what it is that people want. I'm about the people because I'm one of them. And my slogan is actually principles above politics, because we have to really, really maintain those. And that's what we've lost, unfortunately.
So I do want to get take that we're not going to get out of the mainstream news out of this. And I want some statistics on what's going on with the Libertarian Party right now as far as who's in the lead, how the process works, how the delegate system works, and who's all running right now, because I don't think anybody knows. So I can let you lead that if because you seem to have the information. Well, you're running for it, so you would have the information for that. So give us a quick rundown on what the LP looks like currently.
Well, the Libertarian Party, first of all, is different than anybody else in the sense that they nominate the delegates, and they have the state conventions and everything. Unfortunately, right now with what's going on, we haven't been able to hold a lot of the state conventions in person. So it's really hit and affected us a lot. The fact that we're not in the mainstream media, it's not just about libertarians and doing podcasts and whatnot, the people need to know, the United States need to know, the American citizens need to know that there is another party. It's not just the libertarians, because a lot of these people who are independents, who are non-party affiliates, can join the Libertarian Party. They just don't know about it, especially the Hispanics and the Latin community. That, there's a misconception that the word libertarian means liberals, or the same way how when the people, the Hispanics, they want, they get their citizenship and they registering to vote, and they run away from socialism and communism and they want to come to the United States for democracy, and they register as a Democrat thinking Democrat means democracy. So it's about educating the people. I think that's what we need to do. We need to educate the people for what it is and what we stand for and what we represent, and raise an awareness. And the candidates that we have running right now, we have quite a few that are doing it for the right reasons, and they all have great ideas. And I think we need to unite as a party like anybody else. We don't have this division and this name calling and everybody else has. It's funny because we're actually friends with each other. You become friends with each other. You listen to each other as candidates, and we share ideas because our common purpose is the people at the end of the day, and preserving our freedoms and fighting for our liberty. And that's what separates us as libertarians from all the other parties. So I really hope, and I invite everybody who isn't a libertarian, of course, and is questioning and would like to learn more about it, to look us up, and we're very welcoming to everybody. And the point for me is that you have to come together and find a middle ground and focus on the positive and what it is that we can do to work together, and not focus on the division and all that. So,
okay. Who is currently running on that side? I know there's 5 or 6 people that are looking for the ticket.
Yeah, there's Adam Kokesh.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few, and I think what it is right now is that not everybody that's running is running for the right reasons. A lot of them also are only doing it for popularity, or they're trying to sell a book or things like that. Not everybody is taking us seriously, because we have some people who wear big hats or a boot on the head and things like that. But you have to. The media, the national media, is focusing on those, to make us look bad or whatnot, and they're not focusing on the real candidates that are there, like myself, and the issues that we're trying to resolve, and what it is that our policies that are in place. So again, you have to do your own research. You should look into it, and I'm nobody to really talk bad about anybody, or to judge or to criticize, and it's up to you guys. You should do your research on everybody, and you decide. You should be the one to decide who you want to support.
Okay. So at the end of this segment, I always ask 3 questions to the guest, because we spent so much time this past year talking about the Democratic race, and you have a possibly different perspective on this, because if we had lived in a perfect world, the name at the end of this, at the end of all 3 of these questions, would be somebody that you would be personally running against. So first off, and this is probably going to be a pretty easy one, with the 2 people that are remaining, who do you think out of the Democrat Party is going to be the nominee?
As of right now, Biden.
Biden? That's probably pretty standard as we go along here.
Unless somebody else is going to throw in as a surprise. I don't know.
So, second question is going to be it's kind of a who would you rather, and I'm going to expand this to everybody who ran at this point. I was limiting the question to everybody who is currently running, but since we're down to 2, now I'm going to open the field back up to everybody who ran as a Democrat. So who would you rather have as the president and even the nominee at this point, especially given the fact that under ballot access you would be debating against the person out of the 27 people that ran for the president on the Democrat ticket?
I would say Tulsi Gabbard. And I think they shut her out completely. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to debate her. Of course, I don't agree with everything, but I do agree with her on foreign policy for the most part. And her whole no war, bringing the troops home. I think she was very sincere, being a veteran herself. And when it comes to that, because people don't realize, it's a sacrifice that they're doing, and they're doing it not because, they want to. They're taking orders. Again, we're going back to the whole thing about taking orders. They're fighting wars that aren't even ours. They did not sign up for that.
Okay. And the last one, of course, and this is just purely for the entertainment, for pure laughs and media attention, because we all need a laugh after talking about so many negative topics. Who do you think would have been the most entertaining candidate to be the Democratic nominee out of the 27 that ran this year for the laughs?
The most entertaining?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
No. I don't give attention to any of them, so I wouldn't know. Not in that sense, no.
All right. We're going to check back in with the live chat here and see what we have going on over here. Let's get backed up to what we had going. So, let's see. Where were we? I think we left on Kayla's question. Looks like Ron Helton says Ron Paul is right. The introduction of the Fed allowed for more funding for perpetual wars. Kayla has something that I can read on the air. Politicians must go. You can have Ryan's house when they go. Let's see. What do we got? The revolution was fought to replace the central power of King George with the central power of Washington, D.C. I don't think so. Liberty was on the lips of the revolutionaries, not free lunches. Let's see, what else do we have here? The only good cop in the current political climate is the one who has resigned. Until this country has re-embraced individual liberty, then wearing any uniform for the government is not supporting liberty. Thanks to Ron Helton. Question for you. How do you feel about immigration into America, legal and illegal?
Again, I feel that everybody, worked hard. I mean, the country was founded on immigrants. We need to keep it that way. And I'm a daughter of an immigrant. In fact, I tell everybody I'm a product of the American dream. When my father came here, his dad had passed away, and his aunt did a solicitation. He came the right way, legally, and he worked hard. My dad went to Utica, New York, upstate, and he learned English at a community school, college, and washed floors at St. Luke Hospital and worked at McDonald's, and, to make himself where he is today. And that's sacrifice. And that's what we're lacking nowadays, is that the people don't feel the genuine connection or appreciate the sacrifices that these people are making to become an American. And we need to be understanding when it comes to that, and we need to respect those who are doing it the right way. And we can't stop it from happening. Okay, we can't put quotas, and we can't be selective and in that process either, because that's not fair. But we do need to have some sort of guidelines as well.
Okay. Britt says, I get called from poll firms all the time when I don't support the candidate. They're clearly trying to push. They hang up on me. Yeah. Here's the deal. Sounds like the best, worst idea ever. Britt also says Trump has the same thing Obama had, polarizing likability. The more the opposition hates them, the more their base loves them. Yeah, I could see that. I saw that with Obama, and I especially see that with Trump.
They're constantly in competition with each other and not focusing on the real issue. Again, you want to put America first, you shouldn't care about your ratings, and you shouldn't care about the polls or the numbers or any of that. You should be worried about, helping the people, especially the first responders that are there. I can't believe that we really have the shortages that we have. Or take a look at the whole battle that he had with Cuomo in New York. How is that right? That he requested him to praise him on national television for him to give him the ventilators. I mean, what kind of joke is that? This isn't a game. These are people's lives at the line. And every time they're stalling, people are dying. This isn't a joke. This isn't a hoax like he said it is. Him saying that alone cost us about 2 weeks of people taking this seriously, especially his fan base. And that's what's wrong, is that he's in a position. This isn't a game show. This isn't, we're not acting here. This is real life. And he needs to be serious. I mean, he is the president of the United States, and the
Hmm.
Democrats need to accept that. We're not going to be at war with that. We just have to deal with it. And when election time comes, you have other options.
Yeah.
And that's when you show your vote, but your voice by voting.
Britt says, I think the people know about the party, but the mainstream media portrays the craziest among us. They're talking about the Libertarian Party, which that I can see. And I mean, of
Yeah,
course,
but you want to know something? It's not. I mean, it's not about the crazy because I mean, the word crazy. Sometimes even the crazies that you guys are calling crazy have good points. Okay, it's just they. It's masked with everything else going on. I mean, when I had a debate in Dayton, Ohio, I told everybody I wouldn't go on stage if anybody was wearing a hat or any of that. And you should see the seriousness that came out of the candidates, whether it was there or anywhere else, or even when I wasn't present, when they weren't wearing the hats, because people were, listening to them and taking them seriously. So anybody can be a candidate. They have a right to be, and again, you're right. The media should not be focusing on the wrong and
mhm.
shutting away those who are right and trying to make a difference.
And then the last one before we circle back is going to be from Ron Helton. Cuomo will be the nominee for the DNC. I agreed with Tulsi on foreign policy, but she did not walk the walk. She decried the ME wars, Middle East wars, but remained in uniform. If you're in uniform, you're still supporting the Middle East mission.
You're 100% right. That's what it is. And I felt even she became a hypocrite at some point when the mainstream media kept on questioning her about Assad and whatnot. And she kind of, I think at one point she said that he was a dictator, or she mentioned it like that. And I was very offended, because it's like you were there, the truth, you're supposed to defend it to the T. You don't, buy in or sway just because you're going to be a Democratic nominee or a candidate or wannabe.
And we will circle back then. So our next topic is going to be on, and given our conversation about Saudi Arabia earlier, this is going to be an interesting one here, the oil war. So this past week, and the week before, gas prices reached below $1 per gallon in many states on the average, whereas the national average hit 191, with California, of course, holding up the average price across the nation. Now, we got here, of course, because right before the COVID panic came out, Russia had started to make threats about flooding the market so that they could be the one who sells the oil to China, or so this was reported by Oil Price Watch. They wanted to be the one to supply to China, and then Saudi Arabia went out and turned on the spigot and flooded the market to the point where we're running out of places to store some of this oil. This, coupled with the lack of consumption, of course, meaning that demand for oil has dropped, supply has gone up, and now we have 91% oil. What have you seen on this so far going forward?
No, it was the other way around. It was Saudi Arabia that was doing it on purpose. And to be honest, they should have put a stop. This is done. They did it on purpose to flood the market, like you said. And this is so wrong because, and now the whole thing with them doing negotiations and Trump making that tweet or whatever, what does it do? It drives the prices higher now. So people, especially with what's going on right now, the prices went down when they couldn't use it because they couldn't go out, and now they have to drive around and very scarce in finding things, and they have to pay more money for gas. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a game that they're playing, and it's really wrong that the people are the ones that are always caught in the middle of it.
Absolutely. And I mean, this has affected American business, of course, because our own oil production has gone down entirely, or the value of our production has gone down entirely because we can't keep up with the low prices that these other two countries are putting up. There was supposed to be a meeting today between Vladimir Putin and the Crown Prince. Uh oh, I lost my guess. Hang on a sec, we've got to figure this out. So it appears I've lost my guest, which is a bit annoying here, but that we'll see what happens on technology. That is a bit of a shame, of course. So we will see what happens there. So I'm going to talk a bit more about this oil price war, and we'll probably do uh, the end of this. So let's see, where were we? So at this point, we had the point where Russia and Saudi Arabia were scheduled to have the talks in here, and they canceled at the last minute. I reported on it on Contemporary this morning, and now we don't know what this is going to do, because now we're going to come up to a point where we have all this gas sitting out here, or this oil sitting out here that can't be refined fast enough. There's no demand for the gasoline right now, and they are running out of places to store it. At some point, this is all going to give, and there are even talks that gasoline is going to get down to a point where it may be at negative equity, where they have to give it away at some point. So I'm not sure what's going to come out of this, and of course, we just got the correction on whether or not it was Saudi Arabia that did this, or whether it was Russia. And I was to the understanding that it was Russia that had put the elbow into everything. This, of course, and you got to consider the source. It was oilprice.com, where Saudi Arabia or Russia had put the pressure on. Saudi Arabia ran out right away and said, okay, well, we're going to turn on the spigot then and flood the market. Either way, the market is flooded, and there's no place to get the oil from. Or no place to spend the oil on, rather, not to get the oil from. So we will see what happens with this. We're going to look into the live chat here. We might call it at this point, because I don't know if Souraya's phone died or what happened there. So we're probably going to call it at this. So look into the live chat here, see what we've got going on. Let's get back to where I was. Ron says, I don't know, did my ancestors do it the right way? Some came in 1607 to Jamestown, Cantrells, pushed the natives off their land and claimed it for themselves. Let's see, what else do we have going on? 93 cents for 10% ethanol here this morning. Yeah, I believe it was 91 cents. Close to here. 91 cents was the lowest that we got off of this. Ron, I lost, my guest just kind of blinked out in a second here. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if her phone died or what happened there. But yeah, I don't have a guest anymore. So I think we're probably going to call it at this one here. Let's see. Yeah, I think that is going to be it at this point here. But I do want to thank everybody for coming in and live chatting in the live chat and keeping everything going, even if some of it was too spicy to read on the air. You do still have the freedom of speech in the server and in the live chat, so absolutely do that as well. Thanks for coming in, Ron Helton, Big Cat Kayla, Degas. There was another one on here, South Dingo. Thanks everybody for coming in and checking out the show. Remember, you can go over and check us out over on freedomscoop.com, where you can check out all the other shows. Steve at Ignoramus, The Generational Gap, Wyatt Birkenhoff and his video series, and he's getting into some more philosophy. I recommend that you all go and check that out. Plus, we've got the R-Rated Conservative, who I'm going to be going and checking out later on tonight as well. I recommend everybody go and check that channel out. You got all you guys in the live chat there, you should go check out the R-Rated Conservative and talk the way you're talking in the live chat. That would be great. I think that would be awesome. You can go check us out over there, and if you are just catching up right now, you can catch us over on demand on YouTube as soon as it processes, or over on the audio platforms. It's going to be iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Or you can check out the show on BitChute.com. We upload it over there for posterity as well, because at some point, this show is going to get shut down, whether it be the live chat or something that I said about Obama on the air. At some point, this is going to get shut down. So, at one point, it would be good to go and check us out on the alternative platforms. So, oh, do I have guest? No, I don't know if I have guest or not. Anyway, that's going to be it for the night. We will be back here tomorrow morning with more contemporary, or we will be back here tomorrow night with more Ed's World Gaming. Come on and check us out. We would love to have you over there. And as we always say on this show, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Oh, we might have a guest back. Hang on. Hey, look, everybody. We found a guest again. So we are back in action here. Now, you kind of dropped out mid sentence here, and you were talking about the fact that Russia or Saudi Arabia may have started this whole mess with the oil prices. So finish up where you were going with that.
Oh, yes. No, of course, because they have their own interest. It's all about control. And, the whole thing with even OPEC, it's kind of like a gang, that tells people what to do and when and all that stuff.
So let's get back to the chat, or not the chat, but what we had going on over here. So we had the meeting that was scheduled for today, and of course that got canceled. I didn't see any reason as to why it got canceled, but it was canceled earlier on this morning. I was able to report on it on Contemporary. So, did you see anything on why the cancellation happened, or?
No, to be honest, I didn't.
Okay. What effects could this low gas price, especially given the fact that the demand is going to be so low, what effects could this have on our economy going forward if this continues the way that it is?
I mean, I think it's just kind of another way for them to argue, and at the expense of the people. It's they need to stop the production because obviously everybody's not putting it to use anywhere right now. So for them to do it, they're obviously doing it on purpose, and they know that they're hurting the economy and they're hurting the people. So why would you do that? Again, it's all about their interests, and there must be interests behind it that we don't even know about.
Okay. And the further question on this, and something I've been trying to get the takes of as many people as I can as we go forward, is what could be the possibility, what could have happened if the gas prices would have dropped like this and people were still allowed to travel and go and maybe go to a restaurant or go on a longer vacation instead of possibly flying, going and driving somewhere, hitting a local motel, hitting a local restaurant? What kind of stuff do you think could have come out of this if this had happened when we weren't under a massive lockdown? And could it have gotten as low as it did if we weren't?
I mean, of course, the people would have taken advantage of it. Like you said, they would be traveling. They'd be, they would be happy with it. And obviously, if they're using it, the production would be put into use. So it wouldn't be that low, no, because there would be a higher demand for it.
How long do you think this is going to stay down? Just offhanded.
Until Trump makes it look like that he was able to do something about it and and call his friend and tell him to stop, right? Isn't that what it's all about? His friend tells him what to do, and he tells him, I owe you favors and you owe me, so do me a favor, make it look good. This is what our government has come to.
All right, we are going to check with the live chat here, and we're going to hit one last topic here. Let's see. Let's get back to where we were, and I did read some of this as we were off, as you were offline. So let's see what we've got. They're talking about free trade, and Ron is asking one of the other people how free trade is a cancer. So I'm not sure. He also says we don't have free trade now. Free trade is something that has zero government interference. We haven't seen any of that in our time.
Yes, of course. If we have the free trade, everybody would be able to, we wouldn't have the issues we're having now. The tariffs is what's hurting people.
And Britt says, I think it would be like after 9/11, it would most likely spur the economy and see prices spike. So that's what I have on that. Last thing I have for the day, of course, is something that the mainstream media ignored, and that is the earthquake that happened in Idaho. So on Tuesday or Wednesday rather, a magnitude 6.5 earthquake rocked Ohio and its or Idaho rather and its surrounding areas. The epicenter was within 100 miles of Boise, and some of the shocks were felt as far away as Alberta. I know that Jake, the former CEO of Freedom Scoop, was one of the people that was able to feel it from where he lives, which is very close to the Albertian border over in Montana. Did you see anything in the news on this quake?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what do you got?
I mean, I think it's just nature shifting, we're really not paying attention to it. I mean, we've seen it. We've had earthquakes in places we never thought we would have. And, the weather constantly acting up.
Well, one of the things that's wondered, or made me wonder rather, if we've got a major event getting ready to happen here is, I mean, there are other earthquakes that have happened very recently in places like you said that we wouldn't have seen it at some point. Salt
Or
Lake,
Puerto Rico really bad too, frequently.
what's that?
Uh, Puerto Rico was hit really bad. Jamaica, like frequently, like it was consecutively for a while, uh, about a month ago or so, a month and a half ago.
For earthquakes?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't hear about any of that at all.
they didn't. They weren't talking about it, but it was like happening literally daily, if not every other day, consecutively, and they were really high. And it happened actually in Lebanon and Turkey and that area just a few days ago too. So it's happening all around.
So, do you think that I know that looks like in the live chat, somebody had mentioned that Yosemite's not supposed to blow till August. Thanks, Kayla, for that. But, I mean, do you think something like a volcano or something is getting ready to
Yep.
go at some point?
Everybody has been, yeah, talking about it, and I don't know. I think we need to put a little bit more attention to it as well. Because that could be two catastrophes at once.
Yeah, and possibly get some of these people out of some of these more populated areas there. Salt Lake City got hit, and that's, especially for that region of the country, that's a hugely densely populated area compared to all the places around that. And now, just outside of Boise and San Francisco, we need to get some of these people to spread out. There's space to spread out there. There absolutely is. I've been out west there, and why do you think everybody's ignoring this?
I think it's because it's the same rhetoric. It's just ongoing. The whole thing with the pandemic, and it's just the fear tactic. And if for them to shift right now, it would make them lose, the whole pharmaceutical try to push for vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
and if they were to switch focus right now. But it is important. It is important that they do need to bring it up, and they need to look into it, and we need to have people, to see what's going to happen, like you said, because it's going to affect a lot of people, and we don't need something like this, something else to come on top of what we're already going through.
Well, that's what I had on that. I got a couple messages here in the live chat that are tame enough for me to read on the air here. So, supposed to ask you what you feel about hoppy, and I'm not sure what that means. So,
As a hobby, what
no,
do you mean?
hoppy, Hoppe. I
No clue.
yeah, I don't know what that is either. So that's how I was supposed to ask you that, but I'm not sure what that was.
I know
Uh,
you ask about a hobby, my hobby, but other
yeah,
than that, I don't
that's
know.
I know that's going to be coming up here in a second. Let's see. California is outsourcing earthquakes now, so I'm not under. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry, Britt. I can't speculate on that. Federal dollars are more likely to go towards COVID than the earthquakes, most likely at this point.
if they're talking about the reshifting of the money and the interests and all that, yes, they probably are able to do it more so with the COVID than if it were to be an earthquake. So that's probably why, if they're suggesting it's not being given attention, then I completely agree, unfortunately. Again, it's what I said, it's the interests that are behind it.
And that is going to do it for the live chat here. Thanks everybody for coming in and checking us out for the night here. I thanked a lot of people earlier while we were in the interim here, but I've got one last question for you here, and that is because politics is such a big topic and such a deep and heavy topic. We always try to end the show on a positive note. So tell me about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with work or politics. It could be an album that you've picked up, an instrument that you've tried, a video game that you've been playing, just something that helps you unwind at the end of the day.
Cooking. I enjoy cooking a lot. And of course, it's a lot of the Middle Eastern influence and Latin influence, and just being creative. It's never the same. I tell everybody, of course, we have the traditional meals and things, but I always like to try new things. So, and now that I'm home more often, I think everybody's enjoying.
Well, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Thanks for coming by and helping me read the news for the week and getting some of your message out here to people who may not have otherwise heard of you at this point here. If anybody wants to finish the conversation with me, you can find all of my social media underneath there, or you can find me over on Twitter. That is at EdsBlog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. If you want to finish the conversation with my guest, why don't you tell us where they can find you?
Yeah, again, on all social media with my first and last name, Souraya Faas, Sourayafas. And thank you for having me on the show.
And everybody go over there and check her out. And if you're checking out all the descriptions out here, you can go down and hit the like button and subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. You can find us on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Facebook, Periscope. You can find us on all those platforms. Or if you can't catch us live or you're just catching up now, you can find us on demand on YouTube and on BitChute as well. Or you can take us on the audio platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Remember, if you're on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That always helps us move up the chart. Lastly, go over and check out freedomscoop.com. We are putting up a big telethon this weekend, so come and check us out. 12 hours, and we've got some guests on. It's going to be a call-in show, so go ahead and get on the air and get called in. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are going to be a lot of guests, and hopefully we'll raise some money for some people who were furloughed by this and some first responders on the front line. Lastly, as we always say on this show, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Souraya, why don't you give us a last word?
Well, again, to everybody, I would thank you for tuning in and thank you for having me on the show. And it's like what he said, don't take everything, that you hear or you say. You do your own research. And at the end of the day, when you come to vote for, the individual, what it is they stand for, what it is that they represent. I think that's very important. And everybody stay safe and God bless you.
Take care, everyone.